Minister, thank you very much for your intervention, for the frankness of your analysis on the difficulties of the present situation in Europe, but also for your vision of the future of Europe. The Minister has been so kind that she would be available to stay with us a few more minutes to ask some questions if there are from the floor. Not many, I would assume not more than 2 or 3, but please don't hesitate. You have questions, the Minister is willing to answer them.
Thank you very much, Minister, for your remarks. You said you are a federalist. I have to say that I don't think there would be anyone in this room who would think otherwise, and certainly this applies to me, my generation. Yet what we noticed is that this crisis may have fundamentally altered the trade-off between sovereignty and integration in Europe. That is, for some countries, the surplus countries, so-called, more integration also means more sovereignty, because they get to shape the rules, they get to sort of impose the rules on everybody else. For some other countries, however, more integration comes at a significant loss and with uncertain benefits in the current circumstances. Just to give one example, earlier on we had a discussion on the banking union. So we'll be moving forward, it seems, with a single supervisory mechanism on the one hand, so more control at the European level, and yet there is no guarantee at all in terms of whether or when the common financial backstop will also be introduced, which would be the typical, quid pro quo. So I wonder, when you sort of discuss these issues with your colleagues in Europe, in the Eurozone, what are your feelings in terms of moving forward with this agenda, which, as I said, certainly, is very much ingrained in all of us?
I think that what I feel is what you see, in the sense that the banking union was decided 1 year ago, and we still are, let's say, not exactly very near. Which means that exactly means what? Means that on one side, the intellectually is clear what, but then practically all the resistance come forward. And on top of that, I strongly believe that if you don't have a treasury, you can move out of emergency to the banking system and the banking union, but at the end you need some framework, not for the emergency crisis, but looking forward where you want to go. On top of that, I add another element which is typical of democracy, which is that we have many elections. And some elections are more important than others in some countries. Now it looks like before September 22nd, Europe has to stand still anyhow. Then we will resume in October. But then you will have eventually another very important election in 6 months' time in another country, and et cetera, et cetera. So the complexity and interdependence doesn't have a quick answer. And what I feel when I talk to colleagues is that in some way it's clear what we need, and we even decide to do it. But then it becomes a lengthy process, not because we are slow, but because all the difficulties you were mentioning come to the table. So, but there is no way out. We just have to endure and try to speed as much as possible the process that otherwise is going in the other direction. So I agree with what you are saying, but can be frustrated or not, but we don't have any other option. On the positive side, there is also one positive side, is that however the anti-European mood or irritants, even from some countries from time to time, seriously, no one wants to leave Europe. Not even, let's say, on some islands. So you can really see people who are complaining every day. Europe is too intrusive, too slow, a punishing mechanism, etc., etc. But at the end of the day, nobody wants to leave the table. So we are squeezed in this sort of schizophrenic something in which we want to stay together. We realize that we have to move someplace, but then it's not easy to do for evident reason. Just take a common defense policy. It's not only a question of course, of accountability and who decides what, and et cetera, but it's also a deep inside problem. Like the currency, the army and the flag are, let's say, the pillar of a sort of identity in one way, or a national identity or whatever. Now, the question is that the crisis is obliging everybody to shrink the defense budget, with some exception, but basically we are all shrinking. And we do realize that we would need at least a coordination in what we shrink. And we are not there. Everyone is cutting his own budget and his own capabilities without real coordination with the other ones. So at the end, we risk to scrap all the same capabilities. That's one of the issues at the summit on defense coming in December, at least, to come forward with a white paper in which at least we coordinate how we reduce the budget without reducing too much the capabilities. But even to do that, imagine, even to do that, let alone the banking, whatever, it's really very, very difficult, and we will do it out of need. Out exactly of a shrinking budget capacity.
Minister, if you don't mind, and to speed up our proceedings, I would collect 3 remaining questions, and then you can answer them all together. Thank you. So the next question comes from James Lindsay from the Center for Foreign Relations.
Thank you, Ferdinand.
Council of Foreign Relations. Council of Foreign Relations.
Thank you, Ferdinando, and may I join Ferdinando in thanking you, Minister Bonino, for being so generous with your time and so candid with your comments. You mentioned Syria. It's an issue obviously occupying many foreign ministries today, but I don't want to ask you about Syria per se. Rather, I want to ask you about the broader issue it represents, namely the responsibility to protect. That's obviously an issue that engages a group like this, which is concerned about global governance and the norms of global governance. Now, a few years back, it appeared that the responsibility to protect was emerging as a new norm of international relations. But I don't think it has panned out the way many of its proponents had hoped. We now have more than 100,000 people dead in Syria, and the reassertion, certainly among members of the Security Council, of the norm of not intervening in the domestic affairs of others. So can I conclude from this that the norm of responsibility to protect is dead?
No, take some other. Yeah.
Next one is Charles Power from the Real Instituto Elcano in Madrid.
Thank you very much, Chair. Minister, let me congratulate you for your very plausible and very convincing defense of federalism. You belong to a very long line of very distinguished Italian federalists, or federasts, as they would be known in Britain by some skeptics, rather. Let me just raise 2 issues. The European Parliament launched its outreach campaign this morning, I think, trying to encourage Europeans to vote in the forthcoming elections. How worried are you about the outcome of these elections? Because one of the great paradoxes of the European integration process is that the European Parliament is now more powerful and more relevant than it has ever been, and yet we may end up with a very bizarre electoral result in next spring. And the second question refers to Italy's position within the EU. Italy is the third largest Eurozone member. And you are, I think, in a very special position when it comes to trying to deal and trying to ameliorate north-south, center-periphery divisions. And what can Italy do, and how can it contribute to try and bridge the rather alarmingly growing gap between these member states? Thank you very much.
Charles, my last speaker or question comes from Riccardo Alcaro from IAI.
Thank you, and thank you, Minister, for your intervention, frank and candid as usual. My question concerns Syria directly, and more specifically the Russian proposal. How serious do you consider that? And if you do consider it a serious proposal, what do you think the EU should do in order to make it feasible?
Yeah. Yeah, on the responsibility to protect, I've been following since the beginning with Gareth Evans and others, the beginning of this concept, and during all these years, the relations between the responsibility to protect norm and the Security Council has always been a long-lasting debate. The interference, or interference or intermeddle, depends how you want to put it. It's always been a long-lasting debate. In all the tools that at international level we have invented, the question of the Security Council is always there. Take the International Criminal Court. On the International Criminal Court, on which I am a great fan, with all the limits and difficulties, it remained that at the point we had to decide, does the International Criminal Court survive on his own? Does he have any relation with the Security Council? And we decided that, et cetera, we accepted, let's say, or decided. Now it comes that exactly the country who have not ratified the statute of the Criminal Court are using the Security Council. So, which is, let's say, a positive, in my opinion, a positive development. We have seen on Bashar, for instance, that when China changed the idea as far as ICC, and for what reason, by the way. So I don't think that the responsibility to protect is there. On the contrary, in my opinion, is making a lot of way in the public opinion and in the understanding. For instance, I don't see anyone who is really today defending Assad. The question comes from another point of view. Even the Russians are not saying Assad is our favorite ally and et cetera, et cetera. The question is, can you tell us, please, who is next? So when you gas your people or you kill your people, today is accepted what it was not accepted time ago, meaning that with powers comes responsibility. So this is, culturally speaking, a very important step forward. No one at international level, to my knowledge, is claiming that Assad is the best president that Syria can aspire to. On the contrary, if somebody wants to preserve them, it's for other reasons, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not that. It has a difficult life, as it was always been foreseen. When we started, or you started, or everybody, or whoever started the responsibility to protect, we knew since the beginning that it would have not only need time, but perseverance, but it's not that. I see it as an opposite, let's say, exactly on Syria. Exactly on Syria. It was not even on Sudan. In the face of public or the international community, the condemnation of Bashir in Sudan was not so widespread as it is today for Assad. And the question of preserving him in power as a transition, et cetera, responds to other reasons, not from, let's say, support. On the European Parliament and in Europe, I think this is one of the real questions, in the sense that the risk that we are facing is to find ourselves at the end of May with a very huge presence of not only Eurosceptics, but even more than that, which means all the institution we have, imagine a co-decision procedure with the role of the Parliament, if the European Parliament has such a huge presence of, let's say, populist or nationalist or et cetera, et cetera. So even the existing Europe and the existing institution, if the European Parliament will come forward with a big presence of Eurosceptics, can you imagine a simple procedures where we go? So I think that, for instance, one of the issues that the socialist group have decided to have one candidate is one of the possible idea of personalized, of making an election more attached to a person, right? To give some physical element, or which is not yet the case of come si chiama il PPA? EPP? Who has not yet decided if they are going to this idea, which is not compulsory out of the treaty, but definitely was a possibility according to existing treaty. And I hope they will do, because that makes a sort of an approach, or a sort of a better identity on what are you voting for, whom are you voting for. As far as the role of Italy, first of all, the first role of Italy, I would like not to combine the national and European elections, which is another possibility, which means that for another time, nobody will discuss Europe. You will only discuss national politics. And in the meantime, you also vote for a European something, but without any kind of attention, because all the attention is on another issue. The second question I think my country should do is to have a little bit more of a political stability, and in order that it's almost a mission impossible to make, let's say, any program if you don't know if you are there for 3 months, 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 years. I mean, that's sort of a mission impossible. But we were in a sort of a difficult situation. That is what has been decided. And what we are trying to do. But it's very difficult, let's say. I can tell you my personal idea, but this is not representing a sort of the government idea, also because of this limitation. Really, it's very difficult to present or to have a plan or a program if you don't have in front of you one of the tools which are essential for a project, time. But definitely, I think that one of the things Italy, whatever the institution can do, is, I think, to try to say that the difficulties we are facing, and also some other countries are facing, are not only due to the austerity measures imposed upon us. It's also due to the fact that for 20 years or 15 years, we have been living in a sort of a state of denial of, so at the end you have to do all the reforms at the same time, and they are the tough one. So maybe at least mentally we can try to bridge in this way. On the Russia proposal, first of all, I think we have to go and see, to call the bluff if there is any bluff, to take it seriously, and to try to go and see what is their proposal. For instance, is that a proposal, a binding one, going through the Security Council? Is that a bilateral agreement by which Russia plus Syria, with the agreement of the others, accepts that Russia will be in control of the chemical laboratory or whatsoever? So, but in any case, what seems to me very important is that we have a little window of opportunity before us, which is 2 or 3 weeks, for many reasons. The Congress, the famous German elections, the other famous appointment during which is very difficult to have a military reaction, which is the General Assembly of the United Nations. I've never seen somebody, let's say, having a military intervention just during the general election. Pardon, sorry, the General Assembly. So I think that for one reason or another, and also because the military attack had some difficulties, let's say, on the what is the goal? The coalition of the willing is really willing to do what? Regime change, military punishment, what are the unintended consequences? Are we sure that Assad will not react? But in any case, that's one of the reasons why we were very adamant in calling for a Security Council responsibility. Hezbollah, what will be the reaction? So, as I said, it seems to me that the region is already a powder keg in which if you throw a few matches more, I don't see much result. But in any case, let alone our position, but one way or another, public opinion and so on and so forth, we have come to now, in front of us, we have 2 or 3 weeks, which are possible for a political rethinking. There is the proposal now, today, this morning, and I think that it doesn't make sense simply to dismiss it. But let's go and check and call the bluff and see the details, because let alone who was responsible of the horror of August 21st, and even with a military punishment. The question of chemical weapons is still there, will still be there after the military intervention. And the question of the disaster will be, so in any case, it's something you have to deal with. Even the political solution still will be needed anyhow. So my position and our work, even with European colleagues and so on, is to try to go and see and try even to strengthen the proposal, try to understand if it is a bilateral agreement or if it is a Security Council decision and binding resolution. And I think, let's hope it works.
Thank you very much, Minister Bonino, and I would invite all of you to join me in thanking the Minister, but I would also ask you to remain after the Minister has left this room for a few minutes more to allow Stefano to draw some very short conclusions, closing remarks. Thank you again, Minister.